Hello everyone, and welcome to a video where we're going to show you how to cook a North Indian home-style chicken curry. Now if you've stayed with us at the Spice Route, been on one of our residential cookery courses, or you've joined one of our local cookery courses, you'll have seen this made, and indeed this was the recipe that we did live on BBC Radio Scotland a wee while back. But we thought we'd share this for you as an example of what the videos will be like if you choose to go ahead and purchase one of our regional Indian cookery course tins. So this is a really simple chicken curry, and you'll have a lot of the ingredients already. There's just a few extra ones you might need to get hold of, but actually you can always leave them out if you just want to get started and get something quite close. So first of all, we've got our oil. We're using a rapeseed or Scottish rapeseed oil here, so it's a very good replacement for mustard oil, which is used in a lot of North Indian cooking. Then we've got cumin seeds. We're going to use a teaspoon of cumin seeds, and our whole spices. Now these are used to flavour our oil, so we've got an Indian bay leaf here. You can substitute a regular bay leaf, or if you can't get these, don't worry, just leave it out, it won't make a huge difference. Some cinnamon, some cloves, some green cardamom pods, and a black cardamom pod. All of these freely available. Perhaps the black cardamom a little harder to get, but you can get them online or Asian stores, Asian supermarkets. So those are the first masala, the whole spices which will flavour the oil before our onions go in, and we've got 150 grams there of finely sliced onions. Then, once those are cooked down, we will add the wet ingredients to our masala. So we've got some pureed fresh ginger, some pureed garlic, and some chopped green chilli. Left one whole, just so you can see, this is the type of chilies that we like to use in our Indian cooking, and you can get those at most good supermarkets. Once that's cooked down, then we'll add our powdered spices. So we have a teaspoon of turmeric, teaspoon of Kashmiri chili. We use Kashmiri chili powder because it gives a lovely colour without being too hot, and a teaspoon of coriander powder. Now we do encourage you to be fairly accurate with your measurements so that you replicate the recipes. We do notice that often there's a habit to use way too much of powdered spice, and it can overwhelm the flavour and actually set the whole thing off balance. So now if you like it hotter though, you can certainly add an extra teaspoon of chilli, and we'll show you how we make sure that we get that cooked down to get the flavours right. With that cooked down, then we'll add our chicken. We've got 500 grams here of diced chicken, and that's both breast and leg and thigh meat. We'll be adding some tomatoes. This is a large fresh peeled chopped tomato, but you can use tin tomato or you can use passata, although that'll change the texture a little bit. A little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar, and then we finish the dish off with some lovely full-fat yogurt. And do encourage you to use full-fat Greek or Turkish yogurt, around 10% fat. The reason for that is it holds together much better and makes a much better coating sauce. The thin, low-fat yogurt does tend to separate and split a little bit in cooking. So those are our ingredients. Let's go over to the stove and get cooking. Well, we're over at the stove now, and we've put 3 tablespoons of rapeseed oil into the pan, and that's heating through nicely. First step then is to add a teaspoon of cumin seeds. And as I mentioned when I was describing the ingredients, the purpose of these whole spices is to flavour the oil before we add our onions. This is a common technique throughout Indian cooking, but what you'll notice is that they tend to use different whole spices in different regions of India. This particular dish is sort of a classic North Indian home-style curry. In fact, it was taught to us by friends of ours in Dehradun. And here we're using quite a sort of a typical Kashmiri Punjabi spice mixture. So the cumin seeds are heating there nicely. You can just see them starting to sizzle. We're going to pop in our Indian bay leaf, which is actually a leaf of a cinnamon plant. As I say, you can leave that out if you can't get them, or you could substitute it with a regular European style bay leaf, although the flavour will be slightly different. Piece of cinnamon, and our black and green cardamoms, and our cloves. Now I wish we had smell-o-vision, because if we had smell-o-vision you would be able to tell straight away that hot oil is bringing out the wonderful aromas of those whole spices, and it's bringing the oils out of the spices, and that's what's flavouring the oil for us. Now we're just going to leave that a few moments longer. We don't want the seeds to go too dark because then they can get a little bit bitter. So that's now smelling wonderful. So I'm just going to pop our onions in. So this was 150 grams of diced white onion. Right, so we're just going to let that cook away until our onions are nice and golden brown. As you can probably see, we're starting to get a little bit of colour on the onions, but in these dishes, particularly these North Indian dishes, to get that real depth of background flavour, we want to get those onions really nicely browned and caramelised. So we're going to keep cooking this in the oil for a wee bit longer yet. So we've been cooking those for about 6-7 minutes now, and they're nearly there. You can see we're getting some lovely brown, golden brown tinges on the edges of the onions. But I can't overemphasize the importance of getting these cooked down to a really well caramelized to get those base flavors through. So I'm just going to give them a couple more minutes before we move on to the next step. Okay, so that's us there, I think. Probably took about 10 minutes all in all. See, it always seems like a really long time when you're doing it, but trust me, it's worth having the patience. So I'm going to put our wet masalas in now, which is it's a heaped teaspoon of pureed ginger, same of pureed garlic, and a sliced green chilli. Now we left the seeds in because it's quite chilly up here in the northwest of Scotland today, so we fancy quite a nice warming curry this evening. But if you don't like it too spicy, you could take the seeds and the membrane out of the chilli. And if you really are not into having it spicy at all, you can always leave the chilli out. Obviously it will change the flavour a little, but there's no harm in doing that. And so those have just cooked for a minute or so, and now we'll add our ground spices, so that's turmeric, chilli and powdered coriander. So we're going to just stir that through, and because our mixture is quite dry at this stage, we're going to add just a little bit of water just to help ensure that those spices get cooked through properly. And here's another important point. You need to be sure that these ground spices cook properly, otherwise you'll get a really raw flavour from the chilli and from the turmeric and the ground coriander. And the way that you can tell that they're cooked through, this was a tip that friends in India showed us, is that basically what you'll see is that you'll see the oil start to sweat out of the mixture. So we've brought it all to the middle of the pan there, and can you see how now it's starting to glisten and sweat? And that's basically telling us that mixture's cooked through nicely. We can add just a little bit more water in there, just to keep that moving around. Now, if you, like me, used to buy jars of curry paste to make your curries, essentially what you're buying is this mixture here. But of course, by making it with fresh spices and tailoring it to the specific regions, you'll end up with a much more authentic flavour and much fresher and more layered taste to the curry. Right, that looks to me like it's ready for us to add our chicken. So we'll pop the chicken in. There we go. And we'll just keep this moving around now until we've got it nicely seared before we add our next ingredients. Our chicken's seared quite nicely now. It's not cooked through by any means, but basically what we're trying to do is just get it seared on the outside and get those spices infused into the chicken. But we're now at a stage where we can bring our next ingredient, which is our tomatoes, which form part of our sauce. And that's 150 grams of chopped fresh fine tomato we've used here. As I said, you could use tins, and in fact, if the tomatoes are a little bit tasteless, what we find is quite good is actually using a mixture of tinned and fresh tomatoes. You get a little bit more texture from the fresh tomatoes, which is quite nice, but the tinned brings out the flavour. So that's looking good. Now I think what we're going to do is turn the heat down a little bit, pop the lid on, and just let those tomatoes cook for a wee while before we move on to our next ingredient. As I hope you can see, our tomatoes have started to break down nicely to form the thick sauce for our home-style chicken curry here. And we are just about ready then to move on. First step will be to add a little salt. So I'm going to add just a little under a half a teaspoon of salt. It's always easy to add more. It's hard to take salt out. The only thing you can really do is add more sauce, make more sauce. But so half a teaspoon of salt, and then we add our yogurt. And this has two purposes in our curry. It makes a nice sticky coating sauce, but also it acts as a souring agent. And curries tend to be a balance of sweet, sour and spicy. And so the yogurt in North India is commonly used as a souring agent. In South India you'll find tamarind regularly in curries, has a similar purpose. And so now we've got that lovely creamy texture, and as I mentioned, it's important to use a full fat yogurt if you can get it. You can make it with the low fat yogurt, but you won't get such a nice coating sauce. Okay, so that looks great. Now what we're going to do now is just got the heat right down, and we're going to just let that simmer away until our chicken is cooked through. There we go, that's been simmering away for just over 5 minutes now, and we're almost there. So the last couple of ingredients to go in now. As I mentioned, Indian cookery is all about balancing sweet, sour and spice. This is a quarter of a teaspoon of sugar, just to balance the acidity there, and we're going to use a teaspoon of garam masala. Now I didn't mention garam masala at the beginning. Basically it means mixed spices, and these are the similar spices that we used at the very beginning. So cumin seeds, cardamom, cinnamon and some bay leaf, and that's been roasted and then ground. Now you can buy garam masala at most supermarkets and Asian food stores, or you can indeed make your own. But just to finish it off, so it's a little bit like perhaps adding parsley or parmesan to Italian food. It just goes right in at the end there. And then one more ingredient is a little lime juice. Now you can use squeezed fresh limes. We're actually using a catering lime juice here, so half a lime is equivalent to a tablespoon of this lime juice. And that should be us pretty much there. Now of course, a very, very important step, and my favourite step when I'm cooking any Indian meal, is the tasting. So let's see where we are with our sauce and see if we need to add any more salt, sweet or sour. Yep, that needs just a little bit more salt. Give that a stir in, and then I'm just going to take another clean spoon and give that another taste to see where we are. Perfect, spot on. So what we then should do just to be safe, is to make sure our chicken is cooked through. Should be 75 degrees or above. Or you could just cut a piece in half and make sure it's cooked through, but that looks great. Our temperatures there are all well above 75, telling us that the chicken is cooked through and safe to eat. So there we are. That's our North Indian home-style chicken curry. I do think it's a lovely colour, this curry. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope it's given you perhaps the taste to try some of our other regional Indian cookery. And our first course tin that we're putting on sale shortly is our Kerala course.